Hi, I'm here with Gary Ray, one of the, actually not one of the, but the founder of Darinka, a performance space that happened in the Lower East Side, opened in 1984 on East First Street, and we're here to hear about the history of Darinka and whatever other wonderful details you have to lay on us.
Oh, that's great, Jim. That's good. Darinka was a performance club. I called it a performance studio in the beginning. Let me give you a little background about myself so that I'll let you know how it basically got started. I came here in 1976 to New York as an acting student at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. And at the same time, ever since high school and before, I played bass. So I was playing music in bands and studying acting. And I was doing theater, and then I was in several different rock bands that played CBGBs, Danceteria, Kenny's Castaways, you name it, and State of Desire, the Academy, also Tokyo Tower, some of these bands. And then I was looking for a space where I could live and play, have a rehearsal space of my own. So someone introduced me to this landlord in the Lower East Side, and I told him what I was looking for, and he said, well, I don't really have anything like that, but I have this club. And I said, what? Yeah, my son opened this place up, and I don't like him doing it. It's too much bad stuff going on there. So I took a look at it and said, fantastic. It had a stage, beautiful floor, and I had been going to PS 122. Also 8BC was open at that time because I always loved performance art. And then I got the idea to have a club here. And of course, I'd have to build a bar. There was a back room where I could live and also could serve as a dressing room. And it had this backyard that was full of these old burned beams because the building had a fire. And they took these old burnt beams out and threw them in the backyard. There was a big pile of beams. It was just full of garbage. So I got a couple of friends together. We built a bar. Then we went in the backyard and laid all these beams down flat. So we had a little patio out there. And then it was, I need a name. I need a name for this place. And at that time, the Lower East Side, East Village was still kind of rough, 1984. And people really didn't go past First Avenue much, They didn't get into Alphabet City, so to speak. And the neighborhood had that Eastern European flavor, the Ukrainians, the Polish. And my mother happens to be Croatian, and her name is Darinka. And I thought, well, it's a pretty ethnic name. And the other thing was that a lot of the clubs back then were Spike, Spit, kind of rough names, aggressive. And I thought, well, how can I get the women to come? Hey, I'll give it a name that's a bit feminine, So Darinka was the name. My mother doesn't go by Darinka anymore. She's Dara now. But anyways, that was the way the name came about. And then we opened, 1984, spring of 84, about April. The first performer in our unofficial opening was Tom Murren, the alien comic. And then after that, when we had, yes, rest in peace, Tom. And then after that, we had an official opening with Steve and Mark. That's Steve Buscemi and Mark Boone Jr. And they actually developed a monthly cabaret at my club where they would bring in guest performers to perform with them, like Rocket's Red Glare, John Lurie, Ann Kohler, many other performers from the downtown scene. And that was once a month. They did that. Fantastic show. Actually, I have something I just want to show you. This was one of the flyers from their show. So Steve and Mark, their cabaret. Also, They Might Be Giants happened to be our house band. They started playing there, and I saw them actually at one of the avant-garde ramas at PS 122, and I said, "You guys got to play at my club, you know." And they performed the first time soon after we opened to probably about 5 to 10 people, their friends. That was it. And eventually they played every month. They had a Friday and Saturday night every month. And by the time we closed, which they were the closing act, we got about 350 people in the club. And that was the night we closed. We had 2 shows, so that's twice 350. And fantastic experience. And they were great, developing a wonderful crowd, and many other performers came through our doors. Karen Finley, Joe Andres, and her visual performance group called Liquid TV, Liquid Television. Lots of writers, Patrick McGrath, Peter Churches, Bob Holman, Greg Masters, Anna DeVere Smith also performed at our club. I know I'm missing some, but there's many. Oh, Jack Smith, the great performance artist, performed at our club. Yeah. And, Ethel Eichelberger, wonderful, wonderful woman and performer. And actually, here's a photo that I took of Ethel. Oh. And that was that was in our backyard. She made a little makeup area for her performance. And wonderful performer who actually went to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. So we have that in common. We always used to talk about school. Now, our club basically was open from Tuesday to Sunday, and we opened about 7, 8 o'clock, and we're usually closed about 1. So we weren't legal. We did sell beer, wine, and some alcohol. And then about a year and a half, we opened in 84, and a year and a half later, we got raided. We got busted, yes. And it was really funny because we got raided on a Saturday, but on a Friday, we had They Might Be Giants. And even a year and a half later, they packed the place, packed it. I am not sure how many people were in the audience that night, but the next night when we were raided, we had some artists, performance artists, Andy Soma and David West, who passed out mushrooms to the crowd. So yeah, and that was a small crowd, not maybe 40 people, but that's when we got busted. And to this day, I'll never forget my barmaid and I, Robin Clements, who lived right upstairs. We were handcuffed together and put in the back seat, and people were out on the sidewalk waving to us with the trunk of the cop car full of cases of beer and liquor, whatever it was, and the trunk was sort of open still. And some of my friends who were waving goodbye to us said it would look like we're going to a picnic with all the beer and stuff. But that was, it was funny when we closed, when we were raided. The Palladium had just opened on 14th Street a month before, and New York Magazine did a big article on the Palladium and about all the smaller venues that were in the neighborhood in the Lower East Side. And, I think the cops they had like a map. Oh, well, let's just go see. Let's go from one to the other. Mm-hmm. Who's legal, who's not. And I think that was a big issue with the Palladium people because they did pay a lot of money, to get all their permits and licenses and stuff like that. So we were closed for a little while, and then we reopened again. And there is a performance art book that documents performance art in New York, and it was inaccurate, and it said we did not open after we got busted, but we did. I'm putting that on the record now, and that's when John Gernon came in to manage for me, and he did a great job managing the club and brought in a lot of heavy hitters at that point. A lot of established musicians and performance artists. Alice Donut performed at our club, as well as John Hall, King Missile, as well as Reese Chatham. Yeah, it was. We had quite a scene. And also, by the way, now that I'm thinking about some of the other great events we did, we did 3 of accordion summits where we just had accordion players come. And Zena Parkins was one of the people that initiated that, and that was Guy Klusevich, the other well-known accordion player. They sort of did, and Billy Swindler, who was a performance partner of Miss Parkins, and those were great nights. Those were so much fun. Just accordion, man. Just accordion. We had
in the neighborhood that you were occupying. What other venues were happening at that time? Well,
8BC was another venue that I was a regular at. I loved the club. I hung out there quite a bit. And John Gernon, who came to work for me, actually worked for 8BC, and then they closed. And so I hired him to come over. And 8BC, there was also Limbo Lounge. There was also the Pyramid, also King Tut's Wawa Hut, and others. But ABC No Rio, of course, very raw ABC No Rio, and a lot of there were many places, and back in '84, it was a time when everyone down there did something, as you might not be good at it, but what do you do? Oh, I take photos. I'm a filmmaker. Oh, I'm a writer. I'm a poet. I'm a dancer. Everyone sort of did something like that, and so it was perfect to have Darinka, because people could see their friends. People could come and try things out who had never even thought about doing performance art or a dance piece. So that was really a special thing. Now, by the way, after we got busted, after we were raided, when we reopened as a private club, which made it a little different. So what that meant was, when you came in at that point, you would become a member, and we had these membership application cards where you would write all your information, and then we'd have that on file, and then you would actually get a membership card like this, a Darinka member, and so if we were ever busted again and they came to raid us, even if you didn't have your card with you, we had your card on file. So say, yeah, they're a member, here's their card. So that saved us, until we closed in 1987. And the reason that we closed was my landlord wanted to work on a month-to-month basis. He says, no, I can't give you a lease. I kind of want to sell the building, and I think it's going to be more attractive to a buyer. Well, that was 1987, and from what I understand, they finally sold the building about 2010. So all that time, I could have had Darinka going, but it's okay. I moved on and did other things, but it was a great experience. And many of the people I met doing the club, still my good friends today that I love, and I cherish all the memories.
It was a legendary space in the Lower East Side, but it only existed for basically 3 years.
About 3 years, that's right. 3 years, yeah. And I have to refer to my list just to make sure I don't forget some of the. Well, Dance Noise performed there, of course. Wonderful performers, and we had also we showed a lot of films, video. Richard Kern, Nick Zed showed films there. The Jickets, Fabio Roberti showed his films, as well as Julius Klein, the Swarming Bee Girls. Also, we had Edmund Chabot, who is a professor of performing arts in, I think it's the University of Connecticut, but Mark Derry, also, great, Mark Block. He developed postal art. So he had a show where he had all sorts of art that was mailed to him. And then he had a show of it. We had art shows with Steve Hall. Many artists. Kostabi, Mark Kostabi showed his work too. Fiona Templeton performed there. Also, Phoebe Legere, Jesse Allen, a performance artist. Nina Zhevenchevich, who is a writer and poet, now lives in Paris and teaches in Paris. Let's see. The list goes. Mimi Gazy. Yes, and her old band performed. Also, Linda Hammett and Hammett Dance. Bill Frisell, Elliot Sharp. Let's see. Playwright Gary Goldberg did one of his plays, Darkness, there. And we also had Damian Gray, Garrett Lynn, and trying to see here. I'm sorry that I have to look here. Mikhail Horowitz, Michael Golden, Eve Packer, Ron Miller, also Ted Sputnik. That was a good Kid Ego. A lot of obscure names here, but a lot of Cinda Fraley and her performance War Dreams, and also the Tweed Theater did a piece there. Here's a good one. Nancy Casero did perform. Nancy Casero and Mark Nasser did comedy together and performance art. And they did these evenings where they'd get a bunch of performers, filled the place up, fantastic stuff. Howie Solo was also one of the performers that performed with them. And they came to me at one time and they said, Gary, we've got this idea for this. We want to do a fake wedding. We want to do make it a whole performance thing, So we get married and everyone in the audience is like at the reception. And we want to call it Tony and Tina's Wedding. And I said, wow, that sounds great, but I don't think this is big enough, for you. Because we were maybe about 1,200 square feet inside, and then we had the backyard, an additional. But, you can't get people at a table, in that kind of space. So that was the beginning of Tony and Tina's Wedding, and that's where they got the idea for it. Ellie Covan from Dixon Place lived down the street, and she came to me one time and said, hey, come over to my house. You think I can do what you're doing over here? And I said, I don't know. This is small. Well, the rest is history with Ellie. Just a beautiful Dixon Place down there. It's gorgeous. And I have to give her so much credit for sticking with it and launching the careers of many artists, many performing artists. Hugo Largo is who I meant to say earlier. Mimi, and Hugo Largo, which was.
Tell me about the neighborhood in terms of the capacity for people to be able to rent apartments back then. I mean, your rent, including the space that you had, which was Darinka, was how much a month?
$1,000.
$1,000 a month.
$1,000 a month, yeah, and.
Which is very affordable.
Yes. It was even high then, though.
Yeah.
It was high then, but I could swing it.
Right.
I didn't walk away from that rich or anything, but at least I had money in my pocket, when I needed to do something, put it that way.
Right. When did the gallery thing start happening in that neighborhood? The gentrification with the galleries and stuff?
Well, the galleries started even before 84. That started about 82, 83, slowly. And then by about 80, 88, things started to get, rent started to go up. The end of the 80s started to go up, and then it started to get a little crazy there.
Co-oping of all the apartments.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And landlords were also, getting people out and keeping them empty until...
Warehousing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Warehousing apartments. So it was, the neighborhood started changing when you started seeing people with cell phones. Cell phones and hailing cabs,
Right.
which none of my friends could afford, that's for sure.
Yeah.
None of us could afford that. Speaking of slumming, as it were, you know the expression, back about 85, might have even been 84, Foster Perry, who was a kind of a character of the East Village, asked me if he could have a party at my place. I said, sure. He said, listen, just give me some drink tickets. Let me decorate this place. It was a Raja party. And what he did was he built a throne for himself on stage and two smaller thrones where he had two beautiful girls sitting next to him. And all he did was greet people all night. Well, we had limousines out front almost around the block. He packed the place with people, and that was one of our most financially successful evenings. The drink prices went up a little bit on that night, but Foster Perry, I believe, is now a working psychic, is somewhere around Tucson or maybe somewhere in the Southwest. Yeah, and that was definitely a slumming night for those people because they came in with, tuxedos and looked like they were, somewhere having expensive dinners, right. And now came.
Nice.
What else? You have any other questions for me?
I just wanted to sort of tie in the economics of the neighborhood with your club and how one affected the other, or
Well, yeah, on the corner of Avenue A, right a couple of feet away from where we were, there was an auto parts store. Now, I don't think there are any auto parts store anywhere in Lower Manhattan anymore. Mm-hmm. But that was an auto parts store right around the corner. And I was always weary. I don't know, I thought they always had something else going on there. So I had to be careful, because I didn't flaunt Darinka. It was kind of underground. It was, our door was underneath a stoop downstairs. Mm-hmm. So I always wanted to keep things hush-hush. And I think the performers and everyone loved that. Now, another great thing about Darinka, which I to this day, people say it's true, that a lot of people hooked up there. And when I say that, I mean not only, boy, girl, but boy, boy, girl, girl. A lot of people met there and had a great time together. And, we even caught some people doing some things out in the back. At closing time, but that was the days, and this is pre-AIDS also, right. And it was a different time, but I am so grateful that I had those times when they happened.
Yeah.
So,
great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Thank you.